I would now like to go into my own case study in Dachinkali to look at how people are experiencing development there. So in Dachinkali, income is reliant on outmigration as many parts of Nepal. And Nepal is the biggest remittance economy in South Asia, and it is a deliberate strategy pursued by the Nepali government. But having this mass out migration has caused labor shortage in country and also less food productivities. Farmlands are being abandoned, become much and much more reliant on imported food. And the reliance on market products, especially food products, actually cause food nutrition problem because a lot of the packaged market products are sort of junk food or sweet food like biscuits and also instant noodles. Compared to what they usually eat before market penetration, such as fresh corns or milk products. These market products are much less nutritious, and also it produces solid waste because those food products typically come with plastic packages, and Nepal hasn't have the ability to process garbage. So a lot of the solid waste ended up polluting waterways and rivers. And also, one important observation that I had is people have changing needs following changing consumption habits. Definition of sustainable development that talks about how we should try to fulfill the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of our future generations to fulfill their needs. If you remember, in one of my previous lecture, I was talking about how tea becomes a necessity in Nepal, even though it was not so a few decades ago. But once tea becomes affordable enough and has a technology to be distributed to the household level, people started drinking tea 5 times a day. So I think many Nepali will argue that they absolutely need tea in their life. So what I'm trying to say here is that needs is a very fuzzy concept here. And also, the forest area or the natural resources, they are not really threatened by resource users as being propagated in sustainable development. Because remember, in the Brownland report, the sustainable development says that poverty is the reasons of environmental degradation because it causes overgrazing and overfishing. But in at least in the current Nepali context, the natural resources such as forest is not threatened by resource users. In fact, they are threatened by infrastructure projects such as road building, hotel buildings, monastery buildings. So people are increasingly integrated into the global commodity chain under development. So as places become more developed, it basically just means that people are buying things from further and further places away, or people are working further away. So that actually increase the overall carbon footprint and ecological footprints of consumptions of the community. And also commodity fetishism. So commodity fetishism basically means that we buy a products because of the brand and ignores the labor and the environmental costs and the personal circumstances of people making those products. This is actually counterintuitive to the vision of sustainable development because it encourages people to forget about the ecological costs involved in manufacturing. And also people lose other dimensions of needs such as community solidarity. So as people stop doing agricultural activities, they are not doing things like labor exchange anymore. So in the past, they used to work together during the rice planting and the harvesting season, or work together to make a small road in the forest for grazing purposes. But nowadays, those activities are gone, so there were no needs for such kind of labor exchange. And because of the labor shortages, anything you want to achieve in the rural areas now require you to actually hire other people, hire contractors, building houses, farming, etc. And also in the past, there are a lot of agricultural festivals. Actually, most of the festivals are being designed surrounding the agricultural calendar. But now, because the agricultural activities are not there anymore, the festivals can be celebrated to a very limited extent. And also, people lose autonomous human capital. So, especially after the 2015 April earthquake of Nepal, the country discovered that there are lack of human capital and human labor to rebuild the country, because most of the young and able and skillful human labor are actually out of the country. So there are lack of human resources generally to develop their countries. And also the loss of local knowledge, because once you stop doing activities like agriculture activities or any kind of natural resource harvesting activities in the local level, you will not continue to gain knowledge about the local environment or to transmit your knowledge to the future generations. So it's a matter of time before all local ecological knowledge will be lost. So ultimately, my conclusion is when we get something, we lose something too. So it's not just simply about environment versus development. It's about making choices in our life, like what kind of life we want to live. So I have some pictures here to show you the solid waste in Kathmandu. Which is because of a lot of imported fruit products that are in different kind of plastic packaging, and they are not degradable, and people just dispose them by the riverside because there were no sophisticated garbage disposal system being administered by the government. And also in these slides, I have the abandoned farmland in the left hand side. So in some parts of Nepal, especially the valley, the land is very fertile, so it is a waste of land if it doesn't become farmland, and it also opens up more potential or for opportunities for others to exploit, to convert it to other kinds of land uses. And also in the right hand side is how people are lining up outside the international airport in Kathmandu. They are all migrant workers, so this is a usual seen in the international airport. Every time I went to Nepal, that is what I see. So again, I'm showing you these sustainable development goals. So there are 17 goals here, very ambitious. And so Homewood had talked about how goal 1 is actually contradicting goal 15s. I also see that that might be a contradiction between zero hunger and also responsible consumption and production. So because the idea now is that let's go abroad and work and then use the money to purchase food products. But that might kind of contribute to zero hunger, even though not necessarily well-being, because the nutrition level might be worse. And also, it is very hard to guarantee responsible consumption and production. A lot of these food products come with plastic packages, and individual cannot have means to process this plastic waste by their own. So they ended up polluting the surrounding environments. And also, the other contradictions are such as economic growth and also reduce inequalities, because some people will build bigger houses and some people will remain living the way they did a few generations ago. Last but not least, I will talk about the contradiction between the goal of economic growth with sustainable cities and communities. So going abroad or going to cities to work obviously bring in more financial resources to the village and help to reinvest in the village infrastructure and also improve the living conditions. However, the shortage of human labor and young people who stay back in the village actually makes the whole community life unsustainable. So a lot of agricultural festival cannot be celebrated anymore, and a lot of previous collaborative efforts such as labor exchange cannot be continued to the future generations. So there's also the contradiction between goal 8 and goal 11, as I can see. Okay, so I have a question here. In the COVID-19 period, why migrant workers walk home? So if you pay attention to the news, you can see that in India, in Nepal, there are many migrant workers who start walking from the cities they migrate to work for many, many days, many, many kilometers back to their hometown in the rural countryside. So why are they doing that? the most common reasons they give is that they are unable to sustain themselves in the cities. They don't have money for food and lodging anymore, so they need to go home. So you can see here that the home is really the safety net here. And so this is something for us to think about. What ultimately is important to support the survival and sustainability of our well-being. And have some summary here is about the criticism of sustainable development. Number one here is as Regmi and Walter says, sustainable development really continues the modernist assumptions and other premises that it supposedly opposes. And also, sustainable development goals sometimes contradict each other. When you just list down 17 goals, it creates a false win-win situation, or at least false imaginations of a win-win situation here. And this is not helpful because what you achieve in one goal can be deteriorating to the other goal. And also sustainable development, because it is such a vague concept, it has been co-opted by various parties, including the business sector. So the business sector has now used the term sustainability in their reports to indicate how they can continue to run their business into the future. So even though sustainable development as a notion is quite vague, but it seldom takes into account local conceptions of sustainability, as Homewood pointed out. So it is a concept that is conceptualized in the international level, that's being manipulated or reframed to appeal to the major powerful actors, from business leaders to governments, but it really doesn't care too much about what local people in a diverse ecological, economic, and political context are thinking about what is sustainability to them. So my questions here is, are we doing one step forward and two steps back? So in the 1970s, we have so much criticisms from the dependency theory, from the environmental activists, and the basic needs approach, and things like that. So we do advance a little bit in terms of human development. We start focusing only on economic developments, and we have achieved some achievements in terms of improving social indicators like health and education. But sustainable development seems to forget most of these lessons and go back to the modernist assumptions with a rhetoric inclusions of the environment. And also, I want to encourage you to think about, do you think this is because some inherent structural issues in international development? Is it because of how the different actors are set up with different power relations in international development, that these kind of problems, especially problems of participation, taking into account local conceptions of development or sustainability, will be inherently difficult? I also want to sort of end with a more positive note, because sustainable development is a very vague concept. So I want to ask, is it possible for local people, or for grassroots actors, or for alternative development thinkers to reclaim sustainability? Like, can you use the same term, which is already now very powerful because of the sustainable development goals, to talk about things that you really care about? Do we want to do that? And also, in the last part of the lecture, I want to show you what are the existing alternatives apart from development or sustainable development. And I'm going to direct you to watch a video by a Bhutanese that talks about how Bhutan is a carbon neutral country and will commit to continue doing so. And he also mentioned the gross national happiness indicators that's being measured by Bhutan.